Good morning. Welcome to a regular meeting of a panel of utility commissioners and staff of the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, or PURA, held today, Wednesday, March 15th at 10 a.m. by remote teleconference. My name is Chairman Marissa Gillette, and I'm joined virtually today by my colleagues, the Vice Chairman Jack Bukowski and Commissioner Michael Perrin. We have a three-part regular meeting agenda today. We will begin with our regular calendar before turning to our consent calendar. We also have scheduled for the end of today's agenda an executive session regarding FERC settlement, which I will explain when we get to that portion of the agenda. But for now, we will turn to the regular calendar. The first item on today's regular calendar is docket number 220701, the application of Aquarian Water Company of Connecticut to amend its rate schedule. I will turn to Mr. Jim Bacalina on behalf of authority staff to present the decision that he is recommending that the panel of utility commissioners adopt this morning. So Mr. Bacalina, please. Sorry, Jim, I unmuted you earlier.
There we go. Good morning, Chair Gillette, Vice Chair Bukowski, and Commissioner Karen. On August 26, 2022, the Aquarian Water Company of Connecticut filed a rate application with PURA in accordance with Connecticut General Statute, Section 1619 and docket 220701. Aquarian currently provides water service to approximately 207,000 customers in 56 Connecticut municipalities. Aquarian initially requested a return on equity of 10.35% and an annual revenue requirement of $226 million, but later increased its request to $236 million. If approved, the requested revenue requirement would have increased residential customer annual bills by about 9% on average over current rates, for approximately $61 per year. The authority conducted an extensive investigatory process in docket 220701 involving 4 public comment hearings, several days of field audits and inspections, 7 in-person days of evidentiary hearings, 2 days of late file exhibit hearings, oral arguments, and the issuance of several hundred discovery requests. Through today's decision, the authority approves a return on equity of 8.7% and an annual revenue requirement of $196 million for the rate year commencing on March 15th, 2023. The authorized revenue requirement is an approximate $40 million reduction from Aquarian's request, as they fail to meet their burden of justifying the requested revenue requirement and return on equity. The authority's determination will decrease customers' bills beginning on March 15th, 2023 by about 11% on average compared to current rates, or approximately $67 per year, inclusive of the reduction of the water infrastructure conservation WICA adjustment to zero. Specifically, the authority declined to include in the approved revenue requirement several buckets of expenses that Aquarian failed to adequately demonstrate are prudent, reasonable, and in the best interest of ratepayers. These buckets include, but are not limited to, operation and maintenance, O&M costs, including continued annual costs based on prior periods and adjustments to O&M expenses, and capital expenditures. Examples include $4.9 million associated with Aquarian share of costs linked to its 2017 merger with Eversource, $390,000 in outside legal costs related to this rate case, $300,712 in industry and non-industry membership dues, and $37,812 in entertainment expenses, among others. Importantly, the decision does not bar the company from participating in industry advocacy efforts, nor does it penalize or preclude Aquarian from investing in the local communities it serves. Rather, the decision finds that such expenses that do not contribute to the safe, reliable, and efficient provision of water service or otherwise provide discernible value to a utility's customers should not be the burden of ratepayers, particularly when Aquarian is receiving public goodwill for such endeavors made in its name. Denying these expenses from recovery through rates does not prohibit the company from engaging in such activities. Aquarian may instead fund such activities with shareholder funds. The authority also did not allow going forward adjustment for chemical expense that would have quadrupled the cost of these chemicals to ratepayers. PURA found that this request was based on projections that Aquarian's own suppliers advised were not reliable, and that ultimately the public interest is not served by allowing Aquarian to receive increased revenues to cover speculative costs. Lastly, the authority limited its approval of infrastructure eligible for recovery through rates at this time to facilities in use as of the application date of August 29th, 2022. Aquarian sought authorization for further infrastructure expenses for facilities that were not in service at the time the application was submitted, which would have raised the annual revenue requirement significantly. The traditional utility regulatory principle of used and useful is applied when reviewing the incorporation of prior capital expenditures into customers' rates. This simple standard means that investments must be both in service and provide value to ratepayers in the drinking water distribution system. The company did not meet its burden to prove that the facilities associated with any infrastructure investments made after the application was filed were used and useful. Despite failing to meet the burden of proving the proposed rate is just and reasonable, Aquarian continues to carry a statutory obligation to provide safe, adequate, and reliable service. Aquarian also is obligated to operate efficiently and to prudently plan and invest in drinking water infrastructure. To meet these obligations, Aquarian can avail itself of a unique interim rate adjustment mechanism, WICA, in addition to the annual revenue requirement authorized in this decision. By law, WICA allows water companies to invest up to 10% of their approved revenue requirement between rate cases and up to 5% in a given year. Each rate case resets this cap, meaning Aquarian may seek recovery for additional eligible water infrastructure investments made between the date of this decision and the next rate case up to $19.6 million. The authority authorized a new three-tier pricing structure for Aquarian residential single-family customers designed to encourage conservation by sending appropriate pricing signals to higher volume users and tied recovery of executive compensation to the achievement of key affordability metrics. Ultimately, today's decision protects the public interest by preventing customers from having to pay for costs that Aquarian did not sufficiently justify. As such, staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Vacalina. Is there a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move adoption of item number 1.
Thank you, and I will second. And we will take any comments at this time before calling for a roll call vote. And Commissioner Karen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I want to thank our authority staff for all their hard work on this rate case and the other rate case they're working on concurrently. Also, thanks to all the parties for their focused participation during this docket. I also want to point out that our chair is one of the most hardworking people I've ever witnessed. She's lead on every docket at PURA, including both this water rate case and the electric one we have before us as well. She runs the entire operation here at PURA, including managing all of the staff. I know she has directed this docket from the beginning and through to the end. It is no small feat to manage an entire rate case, let alone 2, and all the other responsibilities she's taken on here at PURA. Madam Chair, congratulations on seeing this docket through. Having said that, this isn't a decision I would have come to had I been the lead on it, but it is a decision we have. Some of the accounting errors and or lack of justifications by the company in this case have really set the stage for what is before us today, and a lack of testimony for proven necessity. Errors on the pro forma, which double counted significant plant and service, is hard to ignore. It then flows through the rest of the calculations and reduces recovered investments. Impossible to not address other than the way it is. The excess accumulated deferred income taxes that the company insisted, or the treatments that the company insisted on in terms of providing to the ratepayers, has also had the effect of reducing the rate base and the revenue requirement. I recognize that some of the cutoff dates the company highlighted or for acceptance into the record seem arbitrary and capricious. It does feel as if a number of the traditional expected rules or process have changed here in the docket. I can certainly see that the company was taken by surprise and could very well feel that decision in places and determinations were arbitrary and capricious. When I first began at the authority, Connecticut had some of the lowest ROEs in the nation. Knowing that many companies that are located in Connecticut or who may consider locating in Connecticut would see that as an economic indicator, I worked with my colleagues over the years to try and provide stable and appropriate ROEs that have been consistently steady between about 9.16 and 9.63, which is what Aquarian's current ROE is, which is also the highest in Connecticut. Those ROEs, while not being especially high, were also not exceptionally low. I have felt for many years now that it indicated Connecticut was a good place to do business, They also were indications to investment analysts that follow Connecticut companies that these were good companies to invest in. I don't think that will be true going forward after adoption of this decision. The ROE in this decision was appalling to me personally, with a 93% basis point reduction. Even the OCC provided for a higher ROE. I was impressed by OCC's brief. There was much in it that I found I could support, including their analysis and proposal for an ROE in the 9% range. This decision's ROE seems to be sending a message. I'm not sure what that message is, but it comes across as something like a punishment. ROEs are as much an art as well as a science. Connecticut has enough trouble rising from the bottom ranks of economic indicators that other companies use to assess our economic environment to run a successful company in this state. And I don't think this will help, especially in a rising cost of capital environment. This decision, I'm convinced, will discourage further ongoing investment by the company in the future. On one hand, in other dockets, not water, we have been encouraging the utility sector to be more aggressive and hurtling toward a net zero environment. One needs investment to do that. On the other hand, this decision will have far-reaching effects into the future for utilities, not just in the water sector. In my humble opinion, it will encourage more risk-averse planning and very cautious execution in other areas of management. And while utilities can't up and move out of the state, in a multi-jurisdictional company, they can pick and choose where and what state they will invest their limited capital. I suspect investment will fall significantly in Connecticut for the foreseeable future and increase in other state jurisdictions, and not just from Aquarian. I have little doubt that they will work to provide professional and prudent efforts going forward to fulfill their statutory obligations for a safe and reliable water system. This decision, I feel, may have an effect on other water systems, the gas system, and electric utilities as well. I don't think it's a stretch to imagine that Aquarian will be back before us with another application for adjustment to its rates within 2 years, if not sooner. I hope when that time comes, they will sharpen their pencils and justifications for their capital investments. Water customers pay some of the lowest rates for the most important commodity, the one we ingest and cannot live without. Water utilities are also the most capital intensive of the utility sector. Connecticut has the highest rated water in the country. In a word, it's a bargain. However, today is a day that belongs to the ratepayer. This decision will provide a significant reduction in rates for Aquarian customers. While rate decreases do happen, it is certainly infrequently. For those reasons, this is a decision that is very hard to vote against. And I cannot in good conscience, in spite of my reservations, allow this decision to fail today. That would have the effect of implementing the company's application as presented and force a $27 million rate increase on the Aquarian system this year and around $20 million over the next 2 years. I'm certain that a near $40 million rate increase would not be in the best interest of ratepayers, which is what will likely happen if this decision does not pass today. So I do plan to vote for this decision and hope that we see a better application by the company in the future. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I've been in the water sector, working in the water sector for quite some time. I've never in my career seen a decision that excluded more items than this. Water is a basic necessity essential to the needs of our citizens in their everyday life, health, and existence for food, hygiene, and sanitation, for our precious environment and wildlife, for safety of our citizens, to protections against disasters, including fire, as well as economic development. Aquarian stated in their exceptions that if you wanted to put a chill on investment, this is how to do it. I don't think it was a stretch for the company during orals to say that this decision in places was arbitrary and capricious. The disallowance of items requested by authority and late files and presented in an agreed upon time, I think illustrates this perfectly. Recognizing that there certainly were issues with excess ADA and some of the plant and service items from the company, which carried due to other calculations. However, this will tell investors to spend their money elsewhere, not in Connecticut. As I was going through the proposed decision, I've gone through many over the years, even the tone of the writing seemed to me to be contemptuous and perhaps even condescending. I have no doubt that this will be appealed to the Superior Court. I think the company has legitimately pointed out that there are items in this decision that are trying to make an example of this company. The ROE is another solid example. The ROE calculations are not an exact science, and we all know that, as we hear in our rate cases in the period of many, many years. But an over 80 basis points reductions is substantially lower than the OCC's, and I think it should be higher as interest rates are projected to continue their increase. And by reducing the ROE, below usual standards, a massive signal to discourage vital investment in water infrastructure and protection for public health, environment, and safety. As recently as yesterday, the federal EPA came out with more standards to protect our water supply, which is going to cost the water companies more to implement. Courts, of course, often defer to agencies' expertise, but some of the exceptions pointed out that there were new rules being applied to the Aquarian in this docket that were not applied to the others, specifically the recent Connecticut water case. While I'm happy for the relief ratepayers received and reduced rates, I worry that the chill on future investment may occur. I also think that a risk-averse company would be unwilling to invest in any troubled water systems down the road. And that means any Connecticut utility who looks through this decision. And I have to say that over the years, Aquarian has done an outstanding job. Where we actually went to them, us in the Department of Public Health, to take out our systems in Southwest Connecticut that could no longer get potable water to the people that they serve, and they stepped up to the plate. At a time when Connecticut has very successfully encouraged business growth and job creation in our state, this decision represents a punitive and anti-business practice message from the state. So I find that unfortunately, I cannot support this decision. I do want to thank all the parties and interveners who put much effort into this docket. And I also continue to have the utmost respect for our hardworking and wonderful dedicated staff at PURA. But today I will be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. So I will offer some brief remarks myself, and then we will call for a vote. So I want to begin with expressing sincere gratitude for the contributions of the parties and interveners in this proceeding. I think OCC, EOE, Smart Water Westport, others have put forward an intense level of effort and scrutiny through the course of this docket. And I think the broader perspectives that come into decisions and dockets ultimately result in more balanced decisions. And I also want to applaud the technical staff of the authority and our lawyers who collectively, I think, have exceeded certainly my expectations for the ability to manage this job as well as the other rate case that is ongoing. And I think we've heard a little bit about potential messages and message sending this morning. I wouldn't couch it that way, but to the extent that we want to suggest today's decision does send messages, I would say that the first message is that broader perspectives result in more balanced decisions. I think at its core, what this decision does is illustrate that the authority is prepared to do its job based on the facts that are put before us in a specific rate case. Frankly, I think the references, especially by the company during written exceptions and oral arguments, that there's a suggestion that there will be a chill on future investment is entirely misleading, given that the company has received authorization to fold into its rates over $600 million of investments. Nowhere in this decision does the authority find any of its investments imprudent. Rather, we have said that they failed to substantiate their evidentiary burden for investments that they sought after a certain date. So the prospect of putting a chill on future investment, I think, is entirely misleading. If we want to talk about messages, what I think this decision should say, is that should be abundantly clear to the regulated entities in the state that the agency is prepared to exercise what I think our responsibility is, which is to provide adequate oversight and to rule on the facts that are put in front of us in a specific docket. And given what we saw in this proceeding, I think that message bears repeating. And from my perspective, I've been saying this during my whole tenure here, including in my dissent on the Connecticut water rate case. I want to be abundantly clear, and this is not my opinion, this is just the statute. The burden of demonstrating that a proposed rate is just and reasonable is squarely on the shoulders of the utility. It's not PURA's job, it's not our stakeholders' job, and it's most importantly not ratepayers' job to carry that burden. The executives of these utilities are well compensated to provide safe and reliable service. And instead, what I saw through written exceptions and oral arguments in this docket was, instead of acknowledging the failure to meet those evidentiary burdens which are defined by law, the company instead put forward several disjointed and frankly outlandish claims, ranging from equating this decision to a precursor of what happened in Flint, Michigan, despite that being an entirely apples to oranges situation of a municipality rather than a regulated utility. There were claims that the decision is politically motivated. There were claims that PURA has ignored the evidence in the record. And we've already discussed the claims that I think are frivolous regarding the investment and the chill on that. But if you put aside the rhetoric, ultimately what I hear is a continued attempt to shift burden. And that is a burden that the legislature has put squarely on those utilities. There's a reason that no other party or intervener in this proceeding suggested that Aquarian met their burden. Ultimately, I want to stress that it is the company's obligation, one that they accepted as a condition of their franchise from the state, to provide safe and reliable service. So in conclusion, I'm disheartened by the company's position in this case, but I'm not discouraged. I think PURA and our stakeholders did the job based on the facts that were put before us. So if there is a message coming out of today, I think it's simply that PURA is prepared to hold our regulated utilities accountable. And I think that's what this decision does. So with that, I will be supporting today's decision. And I would ask Mr. Bumpin to call the roll, please.
Chairman Gillette,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bukowski,
No.
Commissioner Karen,
Yes.
Thank you. The decision passes. The decision is adopted. We will move to section B of the agenda, which is our consent calendar. I'll be seeking a motion to adopt the consent calendar, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move today's consent calendar items 1 through 8.
Second.
Thank you. The consent calendar has been regularly moved and seconded. Mr. Bumpin, please take the roll.
Chairman Gillette,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bukowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Karen,
Yes.
Thank you. The consent calendar has been adopted in full. Next, we're going to turn to the consideration of the following proposed settlement in executive session. There is a resolution and decision of the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority accepting stipulation agreement terms and authorizing its chairman or attorney to sign the stipulation agreements on behalf of members of the authority. This settlement is intended to resolve all matters set for hearing in the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission docket ER 18-1639-015, which relates to Mystic's September 15th, 2021 informational filing. At this time, I will seek a motion for the authority to go into executive session.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Bumpin, please take the roll.
Chairman Gillette,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bukowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Karen,
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, we will be moving all attendees of the regular meeting to the waiting room, or you are free to go about your day. The commissioners are going to move into executive session, which is closed for deliberation of the proposed settlement. The vote with respect to the settlement will be taken on the public record. So if you would like to hear the outcome of that vote, then you can wait in the waiting room and we will let you back in when the deliberations have concluded. Otherwise, we wish you a good rest of the day and we will see you next time. Please bear with us as we go through the administrative step of moving folks into the waiting room now. Okay, thank you for bearing with us. We are back on the record and the recording has resumed with respect to our regular meeting held today, Wednesday, March 15th, 2023. We have returned from executive session And now I will call for a motion with respect to the item on the executive session portion of the agenda, please.
I move adoption, Madam Chairman.
And second.
Thank you, Mr. Bump. Thank you, gentlemen. The resolution and decision of the authority has been regularly moved and seconded. Mr. Bumpum, please take the roll.
Chairman Gillette,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Pakowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Karen,
Yes.
Thank you. The item has been adopted. With that, we have reached the end of today's regular meeting agenda. We will adjourn. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday, March 22nd at 10 a.m. by remote teleconference. We will see you then. Thank you and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.